I'm Peter Cook. I write books on music and business. I'm here with Steve Peer, who actually works with music and has made it a business. So it's the same sort of stuff. Good evening, Steve.
Hey, good evening, Peter. And I'm trying to write a book about music and business, but as you say, I kind of experienced it and have yet to write the book.
Well, perhaps these are our jam sessions into writing a book together. Who knows? But anyway, we're here this evening to talk about, I guess, the anatomy of a band, be it a rock band, a jazz band, or anything else. And one of the books I wrote compares the different styles of interaction in those bands, be it jazz, rock, or anything else. But you've actually been there and done it. So I'm interested in how diverse characters manage to hold together in a band for long enough to make beautiful music. Can you shed some light on that, please?
Yeah, I might be able to shed some light on that. I think right now I do a little flashback, to everybody's, first band or one of your first bands, your high school band, your middle school band, your first college band, what have you. And it's all pretty innocent and all pretty naive and pretty enthusiastic. And even if you're coming from a variety of backgrounds and a variety of skill levels, you have that fire and fury. I should say misguided fire and fury that brings you together. And that innocence, a naive sort of approach is charming and pretty effective for a while. However, as time goes on, not necessarily with that particular band, but as your personal tastes become a little bit more specific, your goals become a little bit more targeted, the dynamics do change, and you get a little bit more particular as to who you're gonna work with and be involved with. And then then you start looking for the kindred spirit. Hey, you have that Hendrix experience together, or maybe more currently, people get together and have that Oasis feel, or a Lady Gaga thing. Everyone starts to kind of look for people who have specific sort of mentors or idols in mind, and you start to kind of form things around common interests.
But I mean, bands are quite a good example of not similar people. They have certain things in common, like making the music, but they often couldn't live together. I mean, the Beatles being quite a good example. There's that sort of creative tension between Lennon and McCartney. I mean, how do you deal with the difficult sods that you have to work with? You've worked many bands. I mean,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, well, if you're able, it's somewhat of a sophisticated skill or an upbringing. I think having a bit of empathy goes a long way. It helps you be tolerant of different people, or accepting of maybe their harsh ways, or accepting of their shy ways. But they've got something in there, and you empathize with that. You kind of want to build that. You want to work with that. You're not impatient, and so. A good leader will bring a diverse group of people together. Diversity can also mean skill level, temperament, like we're touching on right now, because certainly I can't imagine too many bands, as you say, the Beatles or, right, the Gallagher brothers, all, maybe growing up together, but the two growing up together, but not really living together now. That would be pretty funny. That'd be a TV show in itself. So, bands can certainly come together for hours or weeks or maybe an extended tour and tolerate each other. However, the good leader of the band is tuned in to these diverse personalities and kind of keeps things moving along. I feel pretty good at doing that. Being a drummer, I don't have a lot of necessarily musical talent. I mean, I can kind of pick up a guitar, hammer around on a piano, come up with a song, and actually think it's a fairly decent song and present it to the band and make it work. But that takes a lot of work, and I need people to do that. So I know that I need people to help bring my vision to fruition. So I've gotten very good at finding the best in everybody, overlooking some things, and in that process, I think I've become a pretty good band leader.
But also, as well as being a drummer, I'm deeply aware that you're the kind of person who's looked outside the band to sort of get it gigs and get it sort of on a platform and seen and respected and what have you. And that's a rare skill for someone in a band, to be the kind of person that can pull the guys together and get them gigs, because bands that succeed often, have someone either in the band or they have a manager to do that. But I know you've done entrepreneurial things, putting on concerts and what have you. But way back when you were in CGBGs, having trouble with that word, working with the likes of Talking Heads, and then you were in a band with an exceptional leader called Bill Nelson, but a deep introverted leader, and not someone that's saying, I want this, I want that, not directing the band. So there are different styles of leadership that work in bands, but you've also got this thing of the bass player probably, doesn't see things quite the same way, and may wish to be, stereotypically, bass players are often late.
Yeah, that's right. Or you have several of them in reserve. They're also quite irresponsible.
Have you any shaggy dog stories to tell about how to get things to work in practice, that sort of when you've got to a tight spot or anything like that, or just observations of bands that you've been in where they've had a difficult moment and somehow someone's done something magical to get
right? Yeah, and I think you touched on it when you say you have a band leader, certainly like like a Bill Nelson, who is an amazing visionary, and somehow he does impart that vision to you, very softly, very gently over time. How about a David Bowie? How does David Bowie get a band put together? I mean, he's got the vision ages ago, and at the time, and put things together, and then there's the entrepreneurial types like myself who have a little bit of a vision, or a pretty good vision, but also you want the band to to work, to be a working band. And so you take on more of that sort of grunt position too, and you have to put your creative thing aside, and so you're wearing a couple of hats to wear out that cliche, certainly.
Because Bowie, you stepped on Bowie, and I can't let you get away with that, because I love David Bowie from ever since I began with Bowie around sort of the early 1970s. But Bowie's an exception in a way, because in the world of business, people talk about, you hire someone, then they leave, and then they bitch about the organisation they were in. Lots of Bowie's musicians, after he had a real recycling process of musicians.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But many of them went back. And it's the same with people like George Clinton and Prince. Somehow these people managed to get rid of their musicians. Get rid is a terrible term, but I mean, they leave. But the hallmark of any great leader is that they want to come back. I mean, is there anyone else you've sort of met that's really good at that? Because you take someone's soul away when they have to leave the band. So how do these people stand out from the crowd in your view?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's, I guess, who wouldn't want to be fired or laid off by David Bowie, for a starter? And I think that's the sort of thing you're going in with, what's another word for visionary? But someone who's just got this all mapped out, and if he doesn't have it all mapped out, he's just got the energy and the fury to make something happen. So who doesn't want to be in that presence, even if it's temporary, or you come in, for certain jobs, or hey, I need you for this tour, I need you for this track. Who wouldn't want to do that? And I suspect everyone is treated well, or was treated well, in the David Bowie circles, like we were in the Red Noise Bill Nelson circles. I mean, treated everybody super. I mean, no one is treated like a hired hand. By any stretch. Everyone was definitely treated like family. I mean, we all dressed the same.
Yeah. In the other video, we discussed how you all had to wear uniforms, which must be terrible if you're on stage drumming, but we'll leave that.
That's right.
So actually, can you sort of draw, I mean, one of the books I've written is called The Music of Business. I draw the parallel between jazz bands, where there are many leaders in the band, and leadership passes between the band, and sometimes with a nod, play the head or something, there are little signs and signals that are given to the band. And in a rock band, there is a more rigid structure insofar there's usually a verse, a chorus, and leadership passes round, but nonetheless there is, some sort of, there is less room for experimentation. And then, of course, you get to an orchestra, you have a conductor that's got the sheet music. If it's a good orchestra, the performers have got the same sheet music, and the conductor simply has to sort of help them read it out. So that's actually a hugely tight operation, really. And there's division of labour, there's a string section, and what have you. But I mean, how does leadership pass around? Is it all through nodding and winking, or is there room for planning and the improvisation side of things?
Yeah. Well, you bring up three great examples. I mean, you take the orchestra, leave your ego at the door, set up your music stand, get tuned up, play the part. Great. Jazz, which I've had some experience with. Everyone, I think, as you said too, is a leader in their own area. You've got the drum leader, the piano leader, the bass leader, because everyone's very proficient at what they're doing and playing off each other and really listening. In jazz, I think there's a lot of listening that takes place, and if you have a lead person in a jazz band, the alto sax player. I think of my buddy Greg Abate, a great sax player, and when I get to play with him, which is rare because I'm not really quite up to his caliber. However, he lets me play with him, and he's fantastic, and he leads the charge. Just body language. Looking around, bending over, shifting, turning and that sort of stuff. And he's taking you through the twists and turns of his material. In a rock band, I always feel that those roles are, you talk as if you're all for one and one for all. And that's very seldom the case, I think, unless you're probably a band like Nirvana at the time where, three guys from the West Coast, all get together and they are all for one for all. Most bands, I would think, have a leader, a strong personality, the person with the vision, and everyone's going to sort of tag along. And if you really don't like it, then there's the door. Or we're going to come up with some agreement in advance, and then live on stage, here's the set list. This is how it's going to fly. A little bit more distribution of power, perhaps, and a clear understanding who's driving the bus. I know, as a drummer, I always think I'm driving the bus. I always think I'm kind of pushing the band this way, I'm pushing it that way, I'm controlling the dynamics, which is true. When I start playing a little loud or too loud, the whole band rises. I bring it down, everything comes down. So I have some kind of subtle power as a drummer, as most drummers do, not just me. However, the direction of the band, the concept, the presentation, how we want to interact with the audience, that's been either pre-established with a leader or agreed upon in advance. A little bit like the symphonic orchestra, perhaps.
So, isn't it the case that most successful performance is the result of quite a lot of background preparation so that it looks easy and it looks like it hasn't been prepared for? But people think that rock and roll is like laying around and just drinking and smoking, and then you get out on stage, but there's an awful lot of boring work, isn't there, in order to get that perfect performance? Yeah.
I know when I read an article with Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones when they were only celebrating, I think, maybe their 30th year of being together. And, hey, Charlie, what's it like, 30 years of the Rolling Stones? Well, 1 year of playing music and 29 years of fucking hanging around. And that is so true. I mean, you just mentioned the smoking and drinking. So immediately what came to mind was the downtime, which is why I guess a lot of people get in trouble because there's too much downtime. But that time that you are kind of putting stuff together and so forth, it is a lot of effort. I have a little list over here I printed off today in case we touched on it. I often have like kids come up to me. Well, a kid could be 12, a kid could be 40. Hey, I just finally got my first guitar and I'm learning to play and I want to be famous. So I have a little list here that's kind of a joke. It's like how to get famous, but it really goes through everything from getting your instrument, whatever that might be, studying your instrument, things that you've touched on already, like being on time, and all sort of really obvious stuff that you've touched upon in your books and so forth. But when I look at this list, I kind of chuckle. It's dead boring, because the things that you really have to do to be in a band are the same things you would have to do if you're going to be a plumber. You really have to be, know what you're doing, have your tools, get there on time, be polite and courteous. And especially in rock and roll, courtesy goes a long way, because I think if you and I have talked in the past, you meet the same people on the way up that you meet on the way down. Mm-hmm. And, you got to be courteous and so forth. And you got to think about, why am I doing this in the first place? Am I doing this because I just want to be a fast sax player and play the keys? I just want to be a fast drummer. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people cry. I want to make a lot of money. Oh, that's kind of crazy. What are you in this for? What's the end game here? What are you looking for? A pat on the back, $50? Come on. And so I think when I talk to kids in particular, just like an athlete would talk to a kid, what do you want, kid? What are you looking for? So again, I think, a lot goes into, putting together yourself and preparing yourself to work with other people.
Yeah, and you bring together the idea that this is really not an interview about music per se. It's about all kinds of endeavours that people choose to do in life, be it a plumber, a business person. Piss poor performance is the result of the lack of prior preparation, I think is said. It applies in most walks of life.
Yeah.
I think in another interview, I should want to talk to you about the sorry example of how bands are toxic combinations of creative people, and sometimes they implode. But I think I'm going to say for the moment that will do us for one fantastic sort of dialogue between us. So thank you very much, Steve, for this, and I look forward to the next one that we're going to do.
Yep, Peter, sounds great. See you soon.